Rachael Bonlarron is not with us because she is actually hopefully on her way to or in labor, and this will be a special day for her and her family. The chair of our chamber board routinely attends our government affairs committee meetings, and this morning our chair, Stephanie Mitrione, provides our welcome and opening remarks. Good morning, Stephanie.
Good morning. Thank you, Dave, and good morning, everyone. I just want to say a quick welcome and thank you so much for joining us this morning and every month. A special good morning to Congressman Deutch. We're honored to have you join us today. I've said this once and I'll say it again. I'm always so thrilled to see the great turnout that we get for our Government Affairs Committee meeting. It's so nice to have the participation of our mayors, our council members, community thought leaders, our education partners, and business leaders in this community, all in one place, even if it's virtual now. But on behalf of the Palm Beach North Chamber of Commerce and the board of directors, I just want to say welcome and thank you so much for your participation. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Dave.
Thank you, Stephanie. We have a powerful lineup today. 3 people, 2 of whom I know really well, and the biggest fans in the world of, are here with us. I have 5 children. You're supposed to not have favorites amongst your children, but I really do have favorites when it comes to Democrats and Republicans and the people I met in Washington, D.C. Congressman Deutch is one of the kindest, smartest, most connected people that you almost never hear about because he works in a stealthy way. He's actually served us in Washington for 12 years. He chairs important committees. He chairs important subcommittees. And he represents the people of Broward County towards the north end and also a sliver of southeastern Palm Beach County. And I'm delighted to introduce Congressman Deutch, who is one of the best people in the world. And I'm proud that he goes to work every day for the people of Florida. Good morning, Congressman.
Good morning, Dave. Thanks. It's great to be with everyone. My takeaway from this morning already, before we even have a chance to chat, is that I need to get out there a little more so that I'm less stealthy. But anyway, thanks so much for having me. It's really great to be with you. I'm sorry that I really am sorry that we can't be together in person. But with the vaccines on the horizon, hopefully that'll happen soon. That said, an 8 a.m. meeting when I live in the southernmost part of the county, and this is the North County. This is the North County group. I'm not so upset to not do the commute first thing. Anyway, it's great to be with you. Look, there is and Dave, we miss you up there in DC. I haven't seen you in a while, and it's a good way to reconnect this way, even if virtually. And I see some people I know and lots of new folks. So it's really terrific to be with you. It's been really challenging for our community, for our country. And just here in Florida, over 1 million Floridians have tested positive for COVID-19. Close to 60,000 have been hospitalized. Almost 20,000 have died. And across the country, the virus continues to surge. The ICUs are filling up, and there's a record number of new cases. Yesterday, the CDC reported over 3,400 new COVID-19 deaths. I would just remind us to think back to the early days of this pandemic when we crossed 3,000 deaths, and the stories in every paper in Florida and across the country talked about 9/11. And can you imagine that many people have died, and we're now exceeding that number every single day. And so in Congress, there's a lot that we've needed to do. And I've been working to support our frontline workers, the heroes who have responded to the crisis, who have helped to ease the economic toll of the pandemic on so many, and who have responded to help people get well and to help save lives. And I know here, because I know it's true everywhere, and appropriately so, that you're probably frustrated that we haven't reached a deal on additional relief funding. I really share that frustration. We knew early on that the crisis would be a long-term challenge. We were warned of surges that would come in the fall and winter. This is exactly what we were told would happen. And now we're in December, middle of December, government funding deadline, and the end of the financial lifeline for so many Americans and small business owners is winding down as relief programs wind down. And so we've got to renew that support in Congress. The House passed the HEROES Act to do all that back in May, on May 15th. There was criticism that the package was too big, so we updated the bill, passed a revised, smaller version in October, and we're now at the point where the aid is urgent. So we continue negotiations in Congress, and I want to just spend a moment walking through the bipartisan effort that I support, that I hope we can complete in the next week or so. It's a $908 billion framework. It's got $288 billion for the Paycheck Protection Program and other kinds of small business relief. There's $300 per week for 4 months of additional unemployment insurance and extension of the pandemic unemployment insurance. That it was really important when we did the CARES Act. I worked really hard to make sure that we had independent contractors, gig workers covered who had never been before. So that's part of this conversation. $160 billion for state and local funding. There's $45 billion for airline and transportation funding, more money for additional healthcare providers, over $25 billion for anti-hunger programs and farmers at a time when 1 out of 4 kids in America don't know where they're going to get their next meal. A rather stunning, I think, the most powerful statistic and that demands us to take action. There's rental assistance, and then there's $16 billion for vaccine development and, importantly, distribution, COVID-19 testing, and contact tracing. So the lesson that I think we should have learned from the early part of this pandemic is that relief and stimulus funding from the federal government was really critical to helping to weather the storm. And I suspect that some of you took advantage of the Paycheck Protection Program, recognized that there were opportunities for your businesses, certainly directed people to the resources that were available. Initial relief was necessary to prevent the health crisis from turning into a catastrophic hunger, housing, financial crisis with impacts that would take years to recover from. And now we're at this point where we're transitioning from one administration to another, from one Congress to another, but we can't allow the American people, especially those who are facing such tough choices now, pitting economic security against health and health of your employees, health of the communities against one another. So we've got to take this action. I am hopeful. We don't do this every week. Last week I was the most hopeful I've been in months. This week a little less so, but the needs are so urgent and the voices are so loud for us to act to provide this relief that I'm hopeful over the next week we'll be able to reach an agreement. This week we extended government funding by 1 week. That's to prevent a government shutdown. That's not the way to do things, but it should give us time to do this. That is, if the government doesn't shut down as a result of Rand Paul deciding that he single-handedly wants to shut it down. We're all hoping that that doesn't happen, but that's how things work in the Senate. Apparently, we've got to get a deal done. All right, let me give you a quick update on the COVID-19 vaccine. If I may, obviously that news is really encouraging as we work to end this public health emergency. Yesterday, an advisory committee at FDA voted to recommend emergency use authorization for the Pfizer vaccine. It still needs final approval from the FDA, and then CDC's advisory committee on immunization practices reviews the data. That vote is scheduled to happen on Sunday. So the news is positive there, really positive. And as additional supplies of the vaccine become available, CDC will make recommendations also about other priority groups who should get it after the first 2 groups of healthcare workers and long-term care facilities. The process is going to take some time. There are obviously logistical hurdles in front of us. And I've been encouraged by the Trump administration's work on Operation Warp Speed. If any of you have heard the director of Operation Warp Speed, someone that I think the president should have put out in front very early every day, talking about what they've been able to accomplish, it is really remarkable. And I'm hopeful about the vaccine. Here in Florida, given that the vaccine is not coming tomorrow for everyone, there are steps that we need to take. I've urged the governor to have a statewide mask mandate. Governor DeSantis says that people will wear masks without a mandate in too many places. That's just not true. We know that masks work. They help reduce the spread of of COVID-19. If everyone wears them, we can significantly slow the spread and get through this time until people are in a position to get vaccinated. So that's something that I hope happens. Two more quick things, if I may. One, obviously, we had an election. I just had a couple thoughts about the upcoming 117th Congress. That control of the Senate obviously won't be decided until January 5th with the two races in Georgia. But we know that in the House, we're going to have a smaller Democratic majority, a very small Democratic majority, the smallest in years. Divided control of Congress, or even if the two Democratic candidates win in Georgia, it's going to be a bare majority for either party in the Senate. What that means is we're going to have to work together in a bipartisan way to actually deliver for the American people. The president-elect is committed to representing all Americans. That was the campaign that he ran. I think that his choices for his cabinet thus far are have been experienced professionals. Some of the criticism of these picks is that they're so experienced that it's a lot of people that we're very familiar with. I think that at this moment, that's not a bad thing. We know their dedication to public service. We know they know how to do their jobs. And then the last thing I'll say as we get ready to head into the new year on the political front is I just want to say I think it's really unfortunate that we're now at this point where the state of Texas that modified its own election rules to accommodate voting during a pandemic went to the Supreme Court to attack the four states that did exactly the same thing, but they're there for political purposes to overturn the outcome of an election. I know that emotions ran really high in the election, and President Trump had really strong supporters, and President-elect Biden had really strong supporters, but it's really discouraging for me as someone who reaches across the aisle to work with my colleagues, especially my Republican colleagues in Florida, to see so many of them sign on to onto this. Hold on one second. Can you guys hear me? Hold on.
We can hear you.
Thanks. There's nothing quite like music in your headphones while you're talking to a group of important leaders. Anyway, it's unfortunate that that some of my colleagues from Florida joined this lawsuit to try to overturn the election, and I can't wait. There's every reason to believe that the Supreme Court will dispense with this so that we can actually get back to trying to bring the country together after this election, to recognize the important things that we need to do together, and that when Joe Biden becomes the 46th president on January 20th, and he enters the White House, that we can try to repair these divisions that we saw throughout this campaign, and that we recognize, in large part because the numbers are so close, that we need to seize the opportunities for bipartisanship that are going to help us overcome the challenging times that we continue to face. So while it sounds depressing, I actually view that as an optimistic way to end my time with you. We all have really important things that we need to do in our businesses, and beyond that, we had this really challenging political time. But the thing that has really impressed me and has given me such hope is that through all of this, all of you, so many people in our community have found ways to come together like this as a community, to be there for one another, and to recognize that with all the challenges we face, we're now over 9 months into this pandemic. We're going to get through these challenges. We're going to do it by doing it together, and that we're going to put the really great challenges that we face in politics to the side for the betterment of our country, and especially for the betterment of our community here in South Florida. So thanks so much, Dave, for giving me the opportunity. And I'm sure my staff gave me a briefing somewhere, but I don't know what we're doing next. I'm happy to answer questions if you need to go on to your other.
If you have a few minutes for questions. So,
I'm happy to.
Thank you, first of all, for making time for us. And,
sure.
we've texted a few times, but I know you're busy. I try not to bother you. The thing I've not had a chance to tell you about is this committee. It's one of the things I've fallen in love with since I was with you in Washington. And, we gather the local policymakers and town council members and mayors and the thought leaders of our community. And The education partners are on this call locally. And it's almost like that. Well, it's a virtual now cyber town square meeting that you read about, 200 years ago. It's the coolest thing in the world. So you have an international portfolio, a national portfolio,
Yep.
you're partisan, and maybe we can dig into a few of those. And if everyone can put their questions and comments in the chat, Whitney will field them. So first, I wanted to throw something at you in a perverse backward way. And that is that in the recent election,
It's just the way I like it. Yeah.
in the recent, election, people that I just love, respect, I'd let them walk my dog. I'd trust them with my life, with my wife. They voted directly the opposite way I did on the presidential ballot. And rather than get upset, I love them. They're my friends. For me, it's an issue of wonderment, and there's something to learn. And I wonder if you'd share with us what you learned when so many people voted, in polar opposite ways and staunchly believed that their vote was the right one, and anyone that voted the other way was out of their minds. So that's the first question. What do you learn?
Sure. Well, look, it's not the first time that people have voted exactly the opposite of the way that I vote. And in fact, as the elected officials on this Zoom know, that happens every time we're on the ballot. So I don't need to look at the presidential. I know that there were a lot of people in my district who went to the polls and said, no, I'm not buying what Deutch is selling. A lot of them have no idea who I am, but I have a D next to my name, and that didn't work for them. Some of them I clearly know because they look at me, they look at Joe Biden, and they really like the president, and they think if I've ever criticized the president, that they should vote for me. Look, it's what democracy is. I don't begrudge anyone who they vote for. I like to think that we can have conversations about differences, and there are some, and everyone knows this. We all experience this. There are some of our friends that we've been able to have those conversations with, and there are some people where we couldn't. Again, it's not about what we learned from people who voted. It's I think, Dave, it's the moment that we're in right now, and whether everyone, no matter who you voted for, is willing to acknowledge that we have a strong democracy where people express their views, they cast their ballots, and the election is over. That's the most important thing for me now. It's the people who voted to reelect the president had the right to do it. But for people who now want to cast doubt on the outcome of an election where there is no evidence of widespread voter fraud, and the states that are now being challenged are the states being challenged because they took legal action to help people vote during a pandemic, that's where we need to move on. And it'll be a lot easier to bring everyone back together once we do that. But this one might have been a little tougher, and it didn't help that the president was trying to undermine people's faith in our voting system. But we got through it. Our democracy is really strong, and we need to acknowledge that the election is over, that there is a winner. And I can't believe we're still talking about that now. Finally, the transition is happening, and Joe Biden and Kamala Harris will be sworn in on January 20th, and we'll all have an opportunity to come together then.
Okay, so for the second question, let's move across the ocean. I think it's acknowledged that few people are as good a friend to Israel as you are, and there's been great evolution in the relationship over the last 4 years, as well as over time. And what do you see around the corner? How do things look?
Well, yesterday was it's a good timely question. Yesterday was a big day. The announcement of a fourth deal, normalization, full diplomatic relations. In this instance, the administration announced full diplomatic relations between Israel and Morocco. And that, together with the deals with the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain and Sudan, those are really, really significant steps forward that help to reshape the Middle East. They're good for Israel. They're good for the other countries. They're good for the region. They're good for the security of the region. They, I think, and I hope, will allow over time the Biden administration to both expand the countries that are working together in the Middle East, and also focus on Israel and the Palestinians and work toward a two-state solution. So that's the most dramatic change. It is a very different place in the Middle East now than it was 5 years ago. And 5 years ago is when the Iran deal was signed. And so the president-elect understands that. So as we go forward with these new alliances in place, it's going to give all of us the opportunity to figure out how to confront Iran's nuclear ambitions, recognize the importance of diplomacy, work toward getting back into a deal, certainly recognizing, as the president-elect does, that deal should be longer and stronger. And so it sets up the opportunity for more and better diplomacy. And then just the last thing, I think just in terms of opportunities broadly through the region, there was this realization that, and this is an example, and I think a model for other places in the world too, where there are challenges like this. What Israel has to offer to Morocco, the UAE, and Bahrain, Sudan, just in terms of economic opportunity and the chance to interact, for a country like the UAE, which is this economic powerhouse itself. The idea of entrepreneurs and finance folks from Dubai interacting with the tech entrepreneurs in Tel Aviv, what they're going to create is going to be great, not just for those countries, but for the Palestinians and for the Saudis, and ultimately, I hope will drive more of a greater push for peace.
Okay, so when I mentioned stealth before, my reference was really to, I don't know that many Floridians know how influential you are in the House leadership and what a critical role you play. And tell us a little bit about how you see the Democratic House leadership being different as we move forward into the early stages of the Biden administration. And would you please tell the group here about that gentleman from New York who I think he was just elected to be the head of the D-Trip, is that?
Sure. So first of all, sorry to veer off topic for a second, Dave, but I see Todd Bonlarron is here. Todd, are you at the hospital? That's very exciting. All right. Well, please break in if there's news in the middle of this.
My wife is making me be here today, but I couldn't miss a Ted Deutch opportunity. So. Yeah.
Well, good luck to you and Rachel. We're very excited. Sure. So there is the House. I'll do this quickly, Dave, because not everyone's an insider or follows this as closely as we do. Big picture, there's the long-standing leadership of the House: Nancy Pelosi, Steny Hoyer, Jim Clyburn, and then we have. Again, just to put the names out there for people to start to think about, good friends of mine, Hakeem Jeffries from New York, who's the chairman of the Democratic Caucus, who is a great leader, and many believe, myself included, that he'd be a great speaker when Speaker Pelosi retires. And Sean Patrick Maloney, also from New York, is the new head of the DCCC. We have new people in a number of positions. I'm going to make this point about the Democratic Caucus. With a slimmer majority, and as of right now, we're at, I think, 222, down from 232 Democrats in the last Congress. It's going to mean that every vote in the House, I like to think this always is true, but right now, every vote's going to count a lot. And so there are a lot of my colleagues that you may not have heard of that are stealthier even than I am, who are going to have the opportunity to have their voices heard. Some people you may have seen, people like Alyssa Slotkin and Abigail Spanberger and Elaine Luria, some of the newer members who are really terrific. A lot of attention gets focused on a handful of new members in the House. I understand that, but because the numbers are so narrow now, you're going to get to see and hear from a lot of really talented young for the most part, more centrist Democrats whose voices are going to become really critical in helping the president-elect enact his agenda.
Great. And if you have time for a couple more questions, Whitney West has the next question that's from our audience, our group.
I see that we do have a comment from Council Member Stuart Katz, just thanking you, Congressman Deutch, for proposing the $160 billion for state and local government funding in the package. So he just wanted to thank you for that. But if anyone else has other questions, please
Thanks.
let us know. We haven't received any more in the chat.
So Congressman, I read an article that whispered that you might be moving to a position in the administration. I certainly hope the best for you, but I hope you stay with us and you don't leave your position. Is there any truth to those rumors?
No, I fully expect to keep doing what I'm doing. That was true. It's true because I really am committed to my work and am proud to represent South Florida in Congress. It's also true that there's a 220 majority in the House, which is so slim that I don't imagine anyone from the House is going to wind up going into the administration anytime soon. But no, I really I have an important role to play, I think, as chair of the Middle East Subcommittee and a senior member of the Foreign Affairs Committee and the Judiciary Committee in helping the president-elect do what he said he was going to do, which is to unite the country and re-engage, especially for me and the work I do, re-engage globally and restore American leadership and American values. And I think I can really be helpful to him from where I am.
Great. So one last thing, if you could leave us with,
Sure.
So imagine we'd make you king and we would give you the magic wand and you could decide utter partisanship, which I think we're in the middle of now, or complete bipartisanship. What would you choose and what would that world look like?
Well, I've been watching The Crown, actually, so this is a particularly well-timed question. And when I put the crown on and hold the scepter, look, it would be a whole lot easier. I can, Dave, as you know, and as most people know, there are some things that require an elected official, certainly our electeds here know this, where you really need to stand up and stand up for your values. And sometimes that means confronting people on the other side of the aisle that are your friends, but who are just wrong. And you need to let them know that. You need to do it forcefully. And I don't shy away from that. That said, it would be a whole lot better if we found ways to work together, if the cable news networks highlighted that work instead of the attacks against one another. And I'm hopeful that given that's the kind of campaign that Joe Biden ran, that we'll move back toward that. Just in the past couple of weeks, few people would know this because this isn't what's sexy for Twitter or Fox or MSNBC, but I passed legislation as we discussed before, I passed legislation to strengthen the U.S.-Israel relationship. I passed legislation to help Alzheimer's victims. We passed legislation this Congress. We passed legislation at the end of last year to make cruelty against animals a federal offense for the first time. In all of these, when we passed legislation to go after white nationalist terrorists, to have a strategy to confront them. I mean, all of these are bipartisan efforts. There are things that happen every day in Washington that are bipartisan, and that's the only way things get done. It's a matter of giving a little more credit, I think, to those who work so hard to accomplish that, and frankly, a little less attention to people who see themselves as advancing only by attacking others. That's, I think, how we can start to change the culture in Washington. And to end on a positive note, Dave, I go into every new Congress committed to finding people to work with, to getting to know my colleagues that I don't know, especially those across the aisle, a little bit better than I do now. And as a result of building the kinds of relationships that'll help us get things done. It can be challenging, I know it will be challenging, but the payoff is always worth it. And hopefully we won't need a magic wand. Hopefully we'll just see a greater move toward bipartisanship for the good of the country.
Congressman, really appreciate you going out of your way. This is a really special group of people, and I'm glad you joined us. And I hope you'll make it a regular routine stop every now and then when you have time for us. Hope your family's well, and really appreciate your time.
Thanks. Thanks so much, Dave. I appreciate it. Great to be with everyone. Happy holidays, happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas, and we'll talk soon. Okay. Right,
so the transition to our next speaker, I think, begins or should feature the word competence. That is a real competent gentleman that we just had a chance to share time with. He was very successful in business with one of the major law firms in South Florida, and he goes to work every day very thoughtfully. And what's really interesting, I think, Todd, you're on my screen, and every day you remind me of the competence with which you help the county function. And each of you, I've said this before, but I haven't said it in a while. These people that dedicate themselves to public service, you blow me away, because you have to compromise, you have to reach a budget. You're remarkable in ways that what the congressman said, what we see on TV is just the opposite. The property appraiser that serves us has one of the highest degrees of competence, both in terms of her ability, but also in terms of her certifications and education. And Dorothy Jacks is one of us. She's a part of our community. She was elected to this office after serving in the office for decades and has been our property appraiser since 2016. It's funny that oftentimes the mayors brag with each other about who's got the lowest millage rate or how low things have been in terms of taxation over time. And it's a real source of pride, and it should be. And it's why people love to live in this part of the world, in the North County. But we'd love to have Ms. Jacks in it seems like every year and a half, to give us the update. And Dorothy, we'd like to welcome you once again, and thank you for being with us.
Well, thank you so much, Dave. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. I just want to thank Whitney and Noel and for organizing this, certainly, and also nice to see Stephanie as usual. Some of you may know, and I know that a couple of you do for sure, that I grew up in the North End. I actually went to Palm Beach Gardens High School, and my parents still live on Lake Catherine, at the very north end of Lake Catherine in Palm Beach Gardens. So I see them, I'm in the North End regularly. I don't live in the North End anymore. I live in West Palm Beach, which is where my husband grew up. He went to Forest Hill, so somehow he won that, tug. But I do love the North End, and it's always nice to come and talk to you. I think it's probably one of the most vibrant parts of our county, and we pay a lot of attention to it, especially these days. Before I get started, I did want to just say how terribly sorry I was about Ed Tanzer. You had a great leader in Ed, and he was a super part of our community and a super part of the whole county, and it's a shame we've lost him. And but I know you'll carry on. You're a great chamber. It's a powerful chamber, a lot of important people, and it's great that you have such an involved government affairs section too, and so many of your communities are a part of that. So it's nice to see many friends on the call, Salfazo, and then of course all the leaders from all the cities who are represented on the call. I was looking through, I was like, wow, we've got quite an audience. So that's fantastic. It's good to see everybody. So today I'm going to share my screen and talk a little bit about 4 different things. I'm going to review some high-level figures for this year and talk about the cities, specifically the municipalities in the North End, and then talk a little bit about some trends we saw this year, how COVID is now impacting the market, and what we think we might see for next year. So I'm going to work my way through that, and then happy to answer some questions once I sort of cover a little bit of material. So I'll just share my screen, and hopefully this is going to work. And I'm going to be able to advance my slides.
We see the screen.
You do.
Yes, we do.
I'm just trying to advance my slides.
Sometimes if you click, Dorothy, and then move the arrow, it will allow you to do it.
Oh, got it. Okay, there we go. Good. All right. So thanks, Whitney. So let's talk a little bit about the countywide picture first. You know, Palm Beach County is the third most valuable county in Florida after our neighbors to the south, Miami-Dade and Broward. We're actually neck and neck with Broward, which I find interesting. We have been for many years. They pulled ahead a little bit, but now we're right up back, very close to their value. In fact, I suspect within my tenure, we will probably pass Broward County. Big reason for that is because Broward is fairly built out, and that's not something we are. Broward County, if you think about it, is really like an hourglass with the Everglades coming in on their western edge, and they've built pretty much north to south and east to west. We, of course, have quite a bit more land to build on to our west, and so I suspect that value will pass. But as you can see, we're close to, well, $287 billion with a taxable value of $209 billion. New construction is something I'm going to talk about a little bit. It was a record year this year, the highest year since the just prior to the Great Recession, and a very healthy 5.5% taxable value increase year over year. And I say very healthy because I've seen that number negative. I've also seen that number in 10 and 12%. And while 10 and 12% sounds great, it's actually an indication of a market that's probably moving a little too fast. And so this 5.5%, we like anything from 4 to 6%. So it's right there at that sweet spot of increase where the market is happy and moving. Remember, value is about January 1 each year. So these numbers were as of January 1, 2020, pre-COVID. Our parcel count, 645,000 now, again, third highest in the state. Broward has a little over 800,000 parcels, but of course they have a lot of inventory that's townhome and condominium as well. A parcel is anything that can be taxed individually, so it includes those sorts of big numbers. And tangible accounts, almost 60,000 tangible accounts. Tangible personal property is business equipment. So Publix doesn't just pay tax on their building and their land as part of real property. They also pay tax on all of their equipment, the refrigeration units, the cash registers. And interestingly, because Stephanie's on the call, FP&L is our biggest tangible personal property account, and they are actually the biggest taxpayer in Palm Beach County as well. Their plant out at 20 Mile Bend is worth over $1 billion in tangible value, not even real property, just tangible value. So tangible can be quite significant for most businesses, and you know, it continues to be healthy. It's also an interesting way that we're watching the dynamics with COVID, which I'll get to. So there we are, good. So here is a list of the North End municipalities. I actually, they're not in any particular order. But I know all of them are members of the chamber. And this is just the 2020 value of those cities and also their percentage increase year over year. I would draw your attention to a couple things. I think the percentage increase year over year is probably most interesting. You know, some of the more affordable towns are having really great increases they have for the last 2 or 3 years, mainly because of affordability. You know, you can find property in these communities. Usually it's a little more reasonable, and it really tells us something about affordable housing. We're seeing the same trend in the middle of the county. Places like Palm Springs, Green Acres, even Lake Worth are all showing high annual year-over-year increases in value. And again, affordability is a big part of that. So the city of Riviera Beach had a very good year, as did the town of Lake Park. I'll draw your attention also to Mangonia Park. That's an interesting place because it is still affordable, industrial, and commercial in a really great location. So still close to the water, still close to artery roads, close to 95, close to the port. And I think that's why Mangonia Park continues to see some nice increases year over year. Other places, nothing to sneeze at, absolutely not. City of Palm Beach Gardens doing very well. City of Palm Beach Gardens is our largest geographic city in the county. So it has the most land mass. So they have a lot of opportunity for growth as they move forward. And certainly the other communities are doing very well. Everybody, again, having a positive increase. Let's talk a little bit about valuation trends that we saw this year. Again, no municipality experienced a reduction in value. You probably know we have 39 cities in Palm Beach County. We are #1 in that. We have more cities than any other county. I think Broward has 30. I think they're after us. But we had no municipality experiencing a reduction, which was great. Nobody was even actually close. Well, we had, I think Manalapan was at 1 point something percent. That was, I think, the lowest we had. We also had record new construction. I mentioned that earlier, $3 billion in new construction. And that also included a number of signature properties that you'll be familiar with that came on the roll this year. The Bristol condominium in downtown West Palm Beach came on at $392 million. Probably, no question, the most valuable condominium project ever in Palm Beach County. And that actually isn't even its entire value. There were more units that were not added this year that will be added for 2021 because they were completely shell construction. They just weren't able to be inhabited, which is part of the rules about when does construction get added to the tax roll. So almost $400 million this year, and probably, well, there will be more next year. The Drive Shack came on the roll, although the Drive Shack is primarily a land parcel, and actually the land is in fact exempt because it's airport property, but the building came on the roll, quite a big building there. We had a number of hotels come on the roll, which might be bad now that we're facing COVID, but hotels was a big sector that had a big increases this year. Another one I like, and I'll just mention it because it's in the North End, is called The Hangar. The Hangar is a condominiumed garage. So what you do is you put your exotic car collection into this very, very fancy garage, and you actually share a common space with your neighbors. So you and your neighbors who all own exotic cars can roll your cars out of your garage on the weekends to a sort of community area in the middle and look at each other's cars. And these condoed garages are sort of, I guess, might be kindly called man caves. They include beautiful lounge areas, bars, TVs, that sort of thing. So quite a sort of interesting dynamic. First time we've seen something like that. And it is in the North End. So that was an interesting property. So commercial warehousing and the industrial and construction sectors continue to rise. We were seeing that pre-pandemic, and I don't think that's going to change. It's a big part of the warehousing drive is, of course, the internet economy. The movement to everybody buying online is that people need product near where their customers are. There's a reason that Amazon can get you something the day after you order it, and that's because they've got it near you. So Amazon, and it's not just Amazon, it's Walmart, it's Target, it's all of the big retailers, Lowe's, Home Depot, are making sure that they have their product near you so that you'll continue to buy from them, because the big appeal of it is that it's coming to you so fast. I mean, how are they going to get you to buy online? Well, they're going to get the product to you as if you were going into a store. And in a store, you have instant gratification, so they need to sort of get that to you. So we don't think warehousing is going to have any kind of blip in this, in the COVID environment. And construction continues to be very strong in our area. And I'll talk a little bit about that when we talk about COVID. So COVID, of course, I missed a slide, sorry. Aha, okay. COVID, of course, started really in March, and I won't go into too much about, I think we all know what happened. Really, March, April were very difficult. May was difficult. And then the summer began and things sort of started to ease up and get a little better. We have seen really the hardest hit areas being hotels, non-essential retail, and restaurants. So hotels are probably the worst from our world because, of course, they're buildings and they're usually the hotel and the operator and the developer are all involved in the financing of those buildings. And some of them were, and of course, most of them were empty for much of the year. And then when they were able to reopen, their reopening was hindered. Most of them had to either go to 50%, and even worse, they also had people not coming. It wasn't even a matter of what they could do, it was a matter of getting the public in. We have done quite a bit of research in the hotel sector and know that hotel profits during 2020 dropped more than from the impact of 9/11 and the Great Recession combined. The larger hotels and those that are reliant on trade shows were the hardest hit. So a lot of hotels obviously have meeting space and meetings ended. And so that was a big problem for larger hotels. Limited service hotels, small hotels, boutique hotels, if you want, have done better because they haven't had such an important reliance on that sort of trade show businesses. Restaurants are also hard hit. They are down 30% from pre-pandemic levels. The difference with restaurants, of course, is that many of them are not in owner-occupied spaces. So they are leasing their space. And so possibly their landlord has either been able to extend to them or they've been able to take advantage of the lease protection programs that have been out there. Also, it's a sort of wait and see. It's going to take a little bit longer to see what's going to happen there. Of course, restaurants that were able to convert to delivery or curbside pickup have done better, but still the whole restaurant sector as a whole has had a very, very tough year. However, commercial didn't slow, and we're probably going to see another record commercial year next year. I don't know if you noticed during the shutdown period of the pandemic in April and early May, the only people out on the street in downtown West Palm Beach were construction workers. They were continuing to build. In fact, a lot of projects were able to get more done because they had the ability to get things down the roads, not as much traffic, not as much issue with getting roads open for them and so forth, or closed for us so they can move product. So construction has not slowed, and the residential market has remained strong. I'll talk about that in my next slide, just a little bit about the residential market. So what do we see for 2021? I think there's still further reaction to come in specific commercial sectors. I mentioned earlier our tangible personal property. Our field analysts, the people who actually go out and find the new businesses, have been out. They start their work in October every year. And they've told me that, there is still a lot of small businesses closed. And there's signs on the doors, that business is closed, they're gone. There's no further information. And that's worrying because that's a strip center issue. So if you think about strip centers, most of them are small businesses in the bays. And are they going to come back? Or are they going to opt to maybe work from home or do something differently? And that will affect those landlords as we move forward of what their income looks like. Commercial property, of course, valued based on income, usually income and cost. So that's something to keep an eye on. We continue to watch hotels. When are people going to be willing to really go back to hotels and to bring that market back up? We also have the issue in Palm Beach County that we had a lot of hotels that were just opening as the crisis started. I mean, a perfect example is across from my office in West Palm Beach, the Ben, a beautiful new property that came online, I think around February 20th and closed around March 15th. That was a tough one for them. They are now back and trying and, starting again and have people staying there, but it's not, it's not going to look like a good year for them this year, and certainly maybe probably not for 2021 either. New construction, again, I mentioned we're probably going to have another record new construction year, meaning we're going to add projects that were finished this year. If there is going to be any impact on new construction, it's probably a long-term thing. We'll probably see that in 2 to 3 years. And I just talk about the residential market because it's pretty interesting. You know, a lot of these stats we got, I saw Chip was on the call, Chip Armstrong, but a lot of these stats we get from the Realtors Association. They're really closer to the transactions than we are. You know, I always say that they're ahead of the game and we're behind the ball, right? We're the people who are watching it happen and then reacting in the tax roll, but they're ahead of it. And you know, the residential market was just hot. Really, starting in July, it's done nothing but go up. MLS statistics show an increase in the median sales price in September of 19 of 355,000. It's now in September of 2020, 400,000. So 12% increase. In September of 19, it took about around 2 months to sell a home. Now in 2020, it's less than a month. In September of 19, there were 6,000 listings available. September 2020, there were only 4,000. So you see the residential market is really going to raise everybody up. In fact, we're not even sure that we'll see reductions in overall market values in 2021. We think we'll probably have a flat or a slightly increasing market, basically because the residential market is buoying everything. There's so much movement going on. A lot of it is very supply and demand driven. If you think about it, a lot of people are either opting not to sell their homes because they want to stay put, they want to shelter in place, they don't want to be anywhere new, they don't want to try and move right now. And so that is controlling some of the supply on the market. But on the demand side, you have this thing where money is cheap. So a lot of people are borrowing money at a very, very, very reasonable rate. And you have this movement from the Northeast. It can't be discounted that the movement is there. It's especially happening in the high-end sector of the market. A good friend of mine who's one of these real high-level realtors on the island told me that he's had his best year ever. You know, it seems as though if you have, you know, a great deal of money to invest in your home, you're ready to do it. And the price is no object, and prices are being paid for homes on the island that are just amazing. I'm sure the similar thing is being seen in Jupiter and in Jupiter Inlet Colony and in Palm Beach Gardens and in many of our communities that have that sort of level of property. But again, it's not just at that level, it's all the way down into the median price homes. So we think that that will really buoy the whole system and help us next year and have a really, probably a very reasonable year. So I tell the cities that who are on the call, you know, as we get closer, you know, sort of January, February, March, maybe February, March, feel free to give us a call. We'd be happy to talk to you about what we're seeing. You know, again, we have to look at sales all the way through the very end of the year, and then we start calculating what we're going to do for the new year. Commercial, and the commercial sector, it'll be important to watch, you know, the malls, the non-essential retail, again, all troublesome, but interesting to watch just because I think this dynamic will take some time. It won't be just about suddenly a drop. You know, people often say, well, is this like the Great Recession? No, it's really not. You know, the Great Recession was a true economic crisis. In fact, it was a real estate crisis. And this is a medical crisis. This is a health crisis. And so it is quite different in how it's going to impact our market. And I think Palm Beach County has a lot to be positive about as we move into the next phase of what COVID will affect us with. And with that, I'll say thank you.
Thank you, Dorothy. If you have a few minutes, we have a few questions, and Sydney's going to, I'm sorry, I keep doing that. Sorry, Whitney. Whitney's going to tee up the next two. But just real quick, tell us how the use of technology has revolutionized the function of your office, and a related question, how can we support you to do your job easier, better, more
Thank
efficiently?
you. Yes. So, I think you all probably know, I've always been very committed to how can we use technology. Papa is probably the best example of that. Our website, we constantly look at how we can improve it. But I've really spent the last 3 years focusing on internally how we can use technology. We've invested in a lot of tools. Some of them are research related. So we have invested in information systems that help us get at better information, especially about commercial property, subscription services that are used in the private sector, in the markets and so forth, that help us keep an eye on what real trends are happening in hotels and in warehousing and in those sorts of things. We look more globally than we look more nationally, I should say, than just Palm Beach County to make sure that we're sort of in line with what those should be. We're also doing a lot more with internal imagery. So rather than coming out to your property and looking at it from the road and going, wow, that looks good, we're doing all of that using change detection, which is where our system looks at 1 year over the next of a house and sees how it's changed. And if it's changed, and it flags it for us and says, okay, there's been a change on this house, and it's a great way to do it. As far as how you can help, a big thing is we're working with the cities right now on what we are calling a permit portal, which lets the cities communicate permits to us electronically, as opposed to in many different formats we've had in the past. That will make working permit data faster and more efficient into the future.
That's really cool.
Yes.
Whitney?
Thank you so much, Dorothy. That was very interesting. Our first question is from Michelle Jacobs. What are you expecting to see next year with the moratorium on evictions being lifted in terms of foreclosures, et cetera?
Yeah, it's a great question. I know the clerk is also asking the similar question, because of course, the biggest problem will be the tie-up in the courts. All of those foreclosure processes, if everybody remembers back to 2008 and 2009, it took years to clear the foreclosure issues that we were having then. And I suspect there's going to be a similar problem. As far as where we are, we don't think that the foreclosure numbers will be anything like they were in those years. There just won't be as many. I mean, it was really one of those 100-year storm things that happened then with foreclosures. And we were told by the Department of Revenue back then, and during the Great Recession, to take foreclosure information into our sales qualification studies. We won't be told that this time. There's just not enough. And of course, foreclosures are not a true indication of market. I mean, they are stressed transactions. So it'll be interesting to watch what happens with it. But again, I don't know how much it's going to affect value. I think it'll actually have a big effect on the courts.
Thank you, Dorothy. One more question. There are similar questions from both Frank Cooney with Siska Construction and Sal Faso. Do you see a correction ahead for the skyrocketing home values in Palm Beach County?
Probably, yeah. I think that if we look at what we're seeing now, there's a lot of frantic buying because people are just in a frantic state. I know that sounds very simple to say, but I think there's a lot of truth to that. People are going to start loosening up on selling their home in the normal course of business, and that will provide for more supply. Again, I mentioned earlier, part of our issue is a lack of supply. And so once we can navigate that, once people begin to say, okay, well, I was going to move anyway, so let me put my house on the market, we'll have more supply, and this pent up demand will hopefully kind of calm down a little bit. The prices are pretty incredible, especially in some areas. And it's hard to know whether that makes a market. I think for this year, we will not be making any huge adjustments. We'll be making adjustments upward, which will hold the market up. But we'll probably wait and see really what the indication is through 2022. That's the beauty of what we do. We are not reactionary as such. We are much more sort of cautious, and let's wait and see what this really says. and then let's keep going. I think what helps everyone is this new construction thing, because remember, new construction is new money. The land has been valued. The land has been valued and taxed probably for years, and the land value may increase when the use of the property changes. However, the building adds a lot of value, and that new construction revenue is very important to taxing authorities, and that's going to be there.
Thank you so much, Dorothy. I'll just end with, you mentioned that much of your data comes from the Realtors Association. So I'll point everyone to the chat where Nate Parsons provides the market reports link so that you all can see this information. But thank you so much, Dorothy, for your time this morning.
Thanks, everyone. And I enjoyed talking to you. And as always, please feel free to keep in touch with me if you have further questions. It's always great to hear from you. From the North End, and we'll keep doing our work, and we'll keep you updated on what's happening. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. So Whitney, and I will say Whitney, I wanted to take a minute on behalf of my co-chair, our co-chair, Rachael, Bonlarron, and I. What a great job you've done in staffing us and being our liaison. This committee has been staffed by great people, Sydney that I mentioned a couple times, Inez and others, but you have stood alone in terms of how much you've done to help us and Rachael. And I remember the first time I went to a meeting of this committee, it was in that little bank building. And if we had the 13th person show up, we had to go get a chair, and how it's grown. And a lot of it is because of the technology you guys are bringing to bear. And we moved, I think, from that bank to the North Palm Country Club, and then the Gardens has been hosting us recently. And I really appreciate, you being lent to us, if you will, seconded to us. And it's obvious to anyone that's paying attention, Noelle's a great champion of women and the next generation of leaders. And we're really proud to have you as a part of our family, and really appreciate all you've done. And as we approach the holiday season, I didn't want to, I know we're always short on time, but I didn't want to, cheat ourselves out of thanking you for all you've done.
Thank you, Dave. My pleasure.
And going from one amazing person to another, our next speaker is Ashley Houlihan. She joins us as the General Counsel of the Supervisor of Elections. There isn't any more amazing person active in our community. She served as an assistant state attorney with Dave Amberg in the 15th Judicial District. She tried scores of jury trials, felony, and other types of cases, and literally a couple hundred different matters before courts, and then became the General Counsel of the Supervisor's Office at a time when that office was under criticism. You probably know that our local girl, Wendy, was appointed by the governor to go in there sort of as a reform supervisor. So her job has been, that is both Wendy's, but also Ashley's, to make sure that things were done correctly, lawfully, well organized. And folks, if I told you the hours this young lady works, it is really incredible. 80, 90, 100 hours for, literally a year straight. And moreover, when I'm in the courtroom, I don't often get to watch another professional work because I'm thinking or I'm reacting. She and I have had a chance to appear side by side in a courtroom, and I had a chance to go back recently and read the transcript of that appearance. And she's simply an amazing advocate and has really served our community well. And I hope she'll join us regularly on the committee in the future. So Ashley Houlihan is the General Counsel of the Supervisor of Elections Office, and she's going to tell us about the office, the recent election, and also the Adopt a Precinct program, which we are very happy to tell you, Ashley, this committee has, and Mayor Dan Comerford has invited us to host or man his precinct at Jupiter Inlet Colony, if we can make that arrangement. And we're going to do this for as long as we can do this and staff it as we need to with 8 or 9 or 10 people each and every year, each and every election. So welcome everyone, Ashley Houlihan.
Well, thank you so much, Dave. I really appreciate that. That was really nice. And, thank you all so much for having me. I am thrilled to be here and to be able to give you all this update. I actually live in downtown West Palm Beach. In fact, just bought a condo and am renovating it. So I identify with a lot of what Dorothy was just speaking to us about. And it's also why I'm currently living in the Canopy Hotel downtown. But Dave, who has really become a mentor to me over the course of the last year or so, encouraged me to attend. And I'm so happy that you all agreed to have me. I will try to keep this succinct, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have, so please don't hesitate. I'll begin with a quick rundown of numbers because I think those are always fun. There are currently about 1,022,905 registered voters in Palm Beach County, which is very impressive. We finally hit that 1 million mark this year, which was exciting for us. As of the general election, we had 1 million, almost 20,000 registered voters, and just about 780,000 of those voters actually cast ballots, which is, that's over a 76% turnout in Palm Beach County, which is really very impressive. We had about 242,000 people come out and early vote, and then we had almost 500,000 people vote by mail. So in terms of sort of dealing with COVID and still taking their civic responsibility, their civic duty seriously, the voters in Palm Beach County really were very proactive, and they did a great job. So, so we're really excited about that. We're excited about the expansion of vote by mail and early voting, and what a huge positive impact we think that's had on our ability to really facilitate effective and really good elections. I mean, what we ended up with here was we were able to process so many ballots prior to election day, and it made things go so much more smoothly in this county than they have in the past. And so so a big part of that is due to the voters in Palm Beach County participating and being proactive about voting early, voting by mail, and things like that. And then of course, when everybody came out to the polls on election day, our voters were great. They were very patient. They understand, these are unprecedented times that we're living in. And so, we've done a lot in response to COVID-19 for those polling locations. We have the plexiglass screens for each of our poll workers who are doing check-in, masks, face shields, PPE, pens for each voter, cleaning supplies, distancing tape, extra training for poll workers. But inevitably what this means is that we're limiting the number of people who can be inside of a room and things like that. So it did mean that people sometimes had to wait a little bit longer, and everybody was so understanding and very patient about that, and really think that it contributed to having such a successful election. A lot of that, a lot of those new supplies and things, including the big tent that we had for canvassing, and the smart boards that gave everybody access to actually watch canvassing sort of remotely, and to watch the ballot processing without having to be around too many people. A lot of that came from CARES Act money, but we also we received a grant from the Center for Civic Life and Technology for about $6.7 million. And we spent most of that on voter outreach and education. So we did a lot of radio and news spots. We had billboards, we sent out mailers and flyers. And as most of you are probably familiar, we started a program of mobile drop boxes. So the vans that you saw all over the county, and the county, especially Todd, were incredibly helpful in helping us kind of get that together as quickly as we needed to. We never could have done it without the county commission and all of their help, but it was very successful. It gave voters just one more way that they could drop off their ballots. If they didn't want to mail them, they could drop them off in drop boxes, and we had those all over the county. So I really think that sort of contributed to the success in this election. So moving on to our Adopt a Precinct program that Dave was talking about, this is a really very cool initiative. It exists in other counties as well, but this is sort of our first year really doing it. But essentially, it's a community partnership program. So it's typically associations, businesses, charitable institutions, just local organizations that adopt a precinct or a polling location. So the organizations provide the staffing for those locations from their own staff or their own groups, And it's a really cool opportunity to raise money either for your organization, especially we have a couple of 501c3s who participate, or for another, charity of your choice. It's also such a cool team building experience, and I'm sure Dave can tell you all about that, but he's told me some really fun stories, some really cool stories about, how it's had a positive effect on his own team and the folks that he works with. Our office provides all of the training, all of the supplies, everything that you need. We work very closely with our AAPs, our adoptive precinct groups, to make sure that you feel like you're ready, you're comfortable. So we certainly, you have everything that you need in order to be a successful poll worker, team of poll workers. And it's really neat to see other counties who have been doing this for several decades. Some of them have hundreds of adoptive precinct groups. And when you go around and talk to them, not only is the atmosphere really, very organized and professional from the voters' perception, because you're talking about the same group of 8, 10, 15 people for every election for sometimes decades. So they know what they're doing, first of all, and they know how to work as a team. But also, it's so fun because it's a group of people who are choosing to do this election after election, and you'll see, businesses, organizations, families sometimes adopting precincts, and it's something that they look forward to every election. So when you walk in, it's a super fun atmosphere. Everybody's excited to be there. Everybody's having a good time. And honestly, it's just a blast to hang out with them. So we had 6 during the general election, and we are working very hard to try to improve everything. And we've been meeting with, past participants and prospective AAP groups to try and, get some ideas about what we can do to make it an even better experience for everybody. So we're really excited about this new participation, because I think it's going to be an awesome thing for everybody. And so anyway, it looks like I've got a couple of questions here. Ashley, what do you think will be the impact of mail-in voting in the upcoming municipal election compared to your data from the recent presidential vote? So it's actually interesting. Municipal elections, since we are technically just a vendor for municipalities, the municipal clerks essentially act as their own supervisor of elections. So they get to decide if they're going to have things like early voting and vote by mail. And most of them do seem to be leaning towards using vote by mail, while some are not going to. I do think that there will be a significant number of vote by mail ballots cast in the municipal elections. Honestly, because people have seen how effective and how easy it is to cast a mail ballot. Now you can drop your ballot off at any of our locations. You can pop it in the mail. The postage is prepaid, and you can track your ballot online. So you know if it's been counted. So I think people enjoy, how easy it is and how safe it is. And especially since most municipalities don't utilize early voting, sometimes vote by mail is the most, it's just the best choice for a lot of people if they can't vote on election day. So it'll be interesting to see. I'm not really sure what to expect, but I do think that there will be quite a bit of vote by mail voting, and a lot of people just have, permanent requests on file. You can have a request for a vote by mail ballot that goes through 2 full election cycles. So if you have one on file and your municipality chooses to participate in vote by mail, then we will send you a vote by mail ballot this time around. So we'll see. It will be exciting.
So Ashley, I'm sorry, for the sake of time,
Sure.
we are going to move on to the municipal updates, but I know I speak for Dave and Noel, and we would love to have you back to do a more in-depth presentation to the group at some point. And thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much, guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Ashley.
So I'll move now to municipal stakeholder county updates. I want to go to Todd Bonlarron first, and although everybody cares about what's going on in the county, I think we're more concerned right now with what's going on in the hospital.
Hey, good morning. Thank you. I'm actually here with Rachael at the hospital at Palms West on the maternity floor. So she thanks everybody, Ashley and Dorothy and Ted, for great presentations this morning. Thank you. Real quickly, I know that vaccination is something that is on a lot of people's minds, and that's something that the county has been preparing for quite some time, since September on our local plan. We're working with the state. We expect that when the available vaccines are distributed as early as next week, about 180,000 doses will be distributed throughout the state to 5 main hospitals. In Palm Beach County, we expect that by the 2nd to 3rd week of the availability of vaccines, some of our hospitals will be receiving those to provide some of the initial doses to our hospital workers, and then also to our long-term healthcare facilities for our elderly residents. Those are 2 of the top priorities in the state of Florida for distribution of that vaccine. So we'll be working intently with the state and our local hospitals on that plan. Just another issue on CARES funding. Wanted to say that we've spent a little over 80% of all of the dollars that we've received from the federal government for our CARES distribution, and close to $5 million of that recently to our municipalities that we provided funding for them for reimbursement of expenditures that they made related to COVID, and many of which that I see on the call today. So those are a couple of steps, and thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Todd. And let's move now. I know I want to be respectful of everyone's time. So if we could keep our updates brief. Our next update will come from Jupiter. I see Mayor Wojcicka on.
Hey, Whitney. Yeah, things are quiet in Jupiter, but as Dorothy mentioned, if you wanted to look into the crystal ball of 2021, definitely feels like things are ramping up from the business development, redevelopment planning. While 2020 went super dark in terms of applications and meetings and thinking about things, things are definitely picking up in terms of just seeing things being processed. If anybody's read the Palm Beach Post, a couple of the restaurants along Love Street across from the Jupiter Inlet are going to open. The last I saw is probably in January. The first one's called Charlie and Joe's, or Joe and Charlie's. The Joe is Joe Namath. So that's going to be a huge hotspot or topic. And we have a couple of applications coming down the pike, but clearly there's light at the end of the tunnel in terms of applications and movement on the kind of business development front. So that's all.
Thank
Merry
you so much,
Christmas.
Todd.
Good luck, Todd.
Let's move now to Vice Mayor Rachael Litt with the City of Palm Beach Gardens.
Good morning, everyone. On Wednesday night, the council, along with the community leaders, got together and we had our Christmas tree lighting. There were no community residents there. It was filmed and it is on our Facebook page. So we sort of did it virtually. And then we repeated it last night. We lit the Hanukkah and filmed that, and that is posted on our individual Facebook pages as well. Hopefully next year we'll be able to do that in person. The Gardens to Go Green Market is open on Sundays 9 to 1. Socially distanced, mask required. And the other big thing, back in November, we had approved over $380,000 in CARES Act funding to go to a rent and mortgage assistance program for our residents. We're hoping to help 40 residents be able to stay in their homes and apartments until times get better. So that's what's going on here.
Thank you so much, Rachael. And next is Mayor Abby Brennan with Cuesta.
Good morning. This past week, ground was broken for Sea Glass, a 9-story luxury condominium on the Atlantic Ocean. It features up to 5,300 square feet per unit for bedrooms and 5.5 baths with wraparound terraces. And we are looking for completion at the end of 2022. We are concentrating on safe family events, including having to Cuesta businesses have a special sidewalk sale this weekend. The residents are encouraged to submit their receipts, and a drawing will be held, and there will be a $1,000 prize for somebody who has purchased goods or services in Tequesta. We are actively planning to assist businesses before, during, and after the construction and closure of the US 1 bridge in Jupiter. That dumps all of into Tequesta at the base of that bridge. All of our businesses will be affected. We have asked for help from both the Palm Beach County Chamber, and because of our location on the Martin County line, we've asked for Martin County Chamber to help us come up with some innovative ideas. And then finally, Santa Claus will be escorted by public safety vehicles to every single street in the village of Tequesta on Christmas Eve. And Santa's helpers with gloves and masks will carefully toss individually wrapped goodies for the children. And that's what's happening in Tequesta.
Thank you, Mayor Brennan. Next, Councilmember Stuart Katz with Juno Beach.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to see everybody this morning. With respect to Juno Beach and the speakers this morning, I did want to reiterate that the millage rate in Juno Beach has declined below 2 for the first time ever, and that our taxes represent only 10% of our total tax bill. Second, I wanted to indicate that so many members of our town council have expressed an interest in this committee. Peggy Wheeler, our council member alternate, is on the call. And in addition, I want to give a special shout out to Jim Lyons, our vice mayor, who's also auditing this call. I think it goes to the importance of the information that's been dissipated here. As far as our local events, we did cancel our traditional Christmas by the Lake Carol thing and our Hanukkah dinner. Instead, we had a holiday parade through the town that was an extreme success and something I think we're going to see again next year. And I want to give a special thanks to Brayman, who came up with a 2021 840i Alpine White convertible for me to ride in the parade. I attended Ed Tanzer's memorial, which was held here in Juno Beach at the FPL parking lot. And I think in the context of this meeting, I wanted to make mention of Ed. Finally, I think that we should support the funding for state and municipal pass-through from Congress. And I think that should be everyone's primary mission in the upcoming week or two, is to get behind that initiative. This is the silly season in municipal politics right now, so there's a lot of juicy stories that I won't share. If there's time at the end of the meeting, I've been getting in preparation by getting involved in the blood sport of politics down in Delray Beach, where you may have heard about the witch trial that they were conducting over one of their P&Z members. I'm not going to report that right now to give everybody else time, but David, if you want me to, or sorry, if you want me to tell that story at the end, I'll be happy to share.
Thank you, Stuart. I'm a stickler on time, so I hate to rush the rest of us, but can we move now, please, to Mayor Alan Fires with Palm Beach Shores?
Yeah, hi. I thought I'd start with a quick rundown on COVID and how it's impacted our holiday preparations. Our town's really been fortunate. Since the onset of the pandemic, we've had 9 cases. And today we have no known cases in town. We've hosted just recently the mobile testing site, and we'll be hosting that site again to keep our finger on the pulse of the pandemic locally. With careful planning, masks, and social distancing, we proceeded with a very successful Christmas tree lighting. Last night we had a very successful Hanukkah menorah lighting program with traditional songs. And on the 18th, we'll be having a caroling and reading session, and that'll close out our Christmas activities, or our holiday activities. Turning to our centerpiece project, the undergrounding, I'm happy to report that we've completed the FPL electrical portion. And with that, thank you, Stephanie, and thanks to the FPL team. They've done a gangbuster job. We're rapidly closing in on completing the communications, Comcast and AT&T phase of the project. And as Hank Williams used to say, the good Lord willing and the creek don't rise, we'll be taking our poles down sometime next summer. So that's all the news from the shores.
Thank you so much, Mayor. Now we'll turn to Riviera Beach for a brief update.
Good morning. I wanted to report that we had a very successful webinar on all things marine. Last week, we talked about floating structures. Michael Stahl gave us an update on the work the county is doing to create an ordinance that we can all of us, actually all of us in the county, but most especially those of us who are waterfront on the Lake Worth Lagoon can adopt. We'll be putting hopefully a moratorium on floating structures until we can adopt that county ordinance. We also talked about managed mooring fields, which we'll be putting in various places. You can see on the map, on the picture behind me, we'll be putting some up here in the north of the bridge here, and then one or two down here to the south of us, to the south of the bridge. The other thing, we had our Christmas drive-through. We lit the tree at the marina and kids drove through in their cars and we threw things at them. It was great fun for us and for the kids, I hope. We'll be doing Christmas for Stony Brook children this year. The charity that I founded is going to buy Christmas gifts for every child who wrote a letter to Santa will get what they asked for, wrapped beautifully and delivered by Santa Claus, excuse me, not my aide, Santa, on Christmas Eve, delivered to their homes directly to the Stony Brook families. And we'll be having a Kwanzaa celebration starting on December 26th. And that's all from Riviera Beach.
Thank you so much, Julie. I don't know if Ken Metcalf is still on with Mangonia Park. Okay, let's move now to Mayor Dan Comerford with Jupiter Inlet Colony.
Yes, two announcements. First of all, the commission passed a state of emergency order to bypass the governor's order not to have virtual meetings anymore. So from this point forward, we will be having virtual commission meetings by declaring a state of emergency. This follows many cities to the south of us, Boca, Delray, Boynton Beach, Palm Beach, and many cities in Broward and Dade counties. And for those of you that missed the Tri-City Barbecue, we sent a check to the three cities yesterday, Belglade, Pahokee, and South Bay, so that they could buy Christmas presents, which is about bringing Christmas presents out there. And I would encourage the rest of you to send checks out there because they desperately need help. So just a thought, it's the season. That's it.
Thank you, Dr. Comerford. I will provide the update for the Jupiter Inlet District on behalf of George Gentile. He wants us to know that they received their Army Corps permit to dredge the shoal in the middle of the inlet last month. Work will begin by the end of the month, and Pat Walker was honored for her service as she is dropping off of the commission in January. I think Mark Cohen is not on with us. I think he had to step off to a meeting. Mark, are you with us? Okay, then that's the end of our municipal updates. The only update I have on behalf of the chamber is to keep checking our website, please, for the upcoming events. As you know, we're in an ever-changing environment right now. So again, please check the updates, and thank you so much to everyone. This was a great meeting. I know that we rushed through. Oh, and I did not want to forget Christine Shaw with FAU. I see Christine on. Christine, can you give us just a moment?
Oh, hi. Good morning, everyone. I just wanted to quickly let everyone know that we hosted the delegation hearing, North County hearing last week. So they met and hosted their meeting on our campus. And then real quick, just wanted to announce that we received a $500,000 gift to launch the Morton Research Forum, which will provide 8 fellowships for honors undergraduates. These students will receive these scholarships and participate in a community-based research intensive fellowship focused on 3 areas of significance for our area, which is data science and artificial intelligence, marine conservation and environmental science, and healthy aging and public health. And this program will also feature partnerships and select companies and organizations and provide new channels for that for these student researchers to get their information out. So we're very excited about that coming up soon.
Wonderful. Thank you, Christine. Last but not least, our next meeting will be January 8th on Zoom. So you guys should have the calendar invite. I'll resend that before we go. And happy holidays to everyone. I look forward to seeing you in January.